After the longest wait ever, we're finally back with Demon Slayer Season 3, the new arc, the Swordsmith Village arc. Obviously, if you haven't already, check out my recaps of the previous 2 seasons. A lot of people were worried going into this season if they would censor things like Mitsuri's bath scene, but thankfully, the gods over at UFO Table indeed do not care. And we got the bath scene in all of its uncut glory, and a whole bunch of other stuff happened in this episode, so let's just go ahead, let's talk about this new episode of Demon Slayer. So let's talk about this first opening scene, because there was a lot of stuff going on. So originally, it starts out with the Demon Slayer Corps. They're starting to survey the area. One of the cleaning crew is there, Goto in particular. It happens right after they defeat Daki, and Goto steps directly on a mirror, shattering it, which means it's one of the first bad omens of this episode. There's a couple other ones that are in here, so I think that is a very important thing I want to mention here, because there's no way there's this many bad omens in this episode to have it not be something that appears later in the season. But even then, there are no doubts the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps believes that they are actually going to be defeating Muzan in this generation, and I believe so as well, because it's the show, you know. Yeah, okay. Moving on, we get to go to Muzan's Tower of Power, aka the Infinity Castle. I mean, this is just really good animation. This entire sequence was it felt like 10 minutes of just some of the absolute best animation that I have ever personally seen. And I always find it funny when people go, oh man, Demon Slayer mid-story, good animation, carried by animation. Guys, it doesn't matter. You're getting a good show at the end of the day. Why are you complaining about something being good? That doesn't make any sense. And this is one of those examples here where it's like the animation is really good, and sure, the story isn't, crazy, but at the same time, the people that are complaining about this are the same people. They go and watch Vinland Saga Season 2, they go and watch Attack on Titan, and they go, oh, it's boring, there's too much talking, where's the fighting, where's the animation? And then they go to watch Jigo Kuraku, and they go, oh, this sucks, there's too much story, where's all the animation at? And then immediately when there's a good fight scene, it's suddenly anime of the year. So these are the same kind of people that are saying this stuff, so it's not anyone important, in other words. But we see Akaza, who is just summoned by Muzan. He realizes that an upper rank was killed, and once again, what a freaking way to open this episode. It was so good. By the way, Akaza, my boy, every season always begins with Akaza in some way being summoned, and I like how they continue that in this season as well, and it just goes to show that I think they're really cooking with Akaza. I don't know what they're cooking, I can smell it, it smells really good, and I can't wait to eat it when it's ready. So we're then introduced to a bunch of some of the remainder of the upper demons. We are introduced to Gyoko, who hasn't been around apparently in 90 years. He comes out of a jar, and this guy's just, at one point he gets his head cut off by Muzan, and he kind of gets off on being touched by Muzan and being decapitated. Very weird dude, but then again, the guy has mouths for eyes and eyes for mouths. I'm not sure how that actually works out, but it's actually a really interesting character design. The next one we're introduced to is Han Tengu, who is one of the upper 4, and he hasn't been summoned in 113 years, which, like I said, is another one of the bad omens, as it's an uneven number, because in Japan, there are no 13th floors on their buildings, and I think in most other places as well, because there is a superstition that 13 is a very unlucky number, and having something being uneven and an odd number in of itself is a bad omen. So there's your second one for this episode. We then see the man from season 2, the upper 2 Doma. All the ladies I know go crazy for Doma, even if he says in this episode that he has a woman's head on display in his room. The ladies go crazy over this man, and all I'm thinking is, I don't want him to kill me. If I think a woman's hot, I don't want her to kill me, but then again, maybe that's not so bad. Actually, I take all that back. Anyways, Akaza doesn't like being touchy, so what he decides to do when Doma puts his arm on him is remove his jaw. And Doma is like, oh, Subarashi. And I'm just like, why? Why? Just why? But anyways, We are then finally introduced to the upper one, Kokoshibo. He is summoned. He looks like the same man in Daki's visions from Muzan's DNA or in blood or whatever it was. And yeah, I think this guy is Tanjiro's something. Uncle? I'm not sure. He's very important in this family of Tanjiro's, the Kamado family. And I think my theory at this point is probably that he's going to have a huge role in a revelation into why Tanjiro and Nezuko lost 90% of their gigantic freaking family to demons. I think it's no mistake at this point that Tanjiro and Nezuko's family was targeted. I think they were targeted. We'll say that, actually. I think they were targeted for a very specific reason. We then see Muzan, who always looking fly as hell. Muzan Jackson, always looking good. Love to see him. And Muzan at this point, he's pretty down. He expects nothing at all from anyone that is working with him because they haven't even found the blue spider lily yet. And as well, Daki and Gyutaro died because Gyutaro relied too much on his sister, which was his weakness. And if you ask me, that's actually, yeah, pretty accurate, most likely. Gyoko then asks, he's like, oh, I got some information, Muzan. And we get to the whole decapitation part where he gets off on that. And Doma asks about the information Gyoko has and asks to tag along. And Akaza tells Doma to basically get lost. And Kokoshibo comes by, cuts off Akaza's hand because he's the commander of all of them and they're all acting insubordinate. So what better way than to punish them both, I suppose. Akaza, on the other hand, he swears to kill Kokoshibo if it's the last thing he does. And then they're all teleported away, besides Doma, who is teleported to a place to await some of his visitors. But this whole Akaza thing and Kokoshibo, I think, once again, this is another one of the reasons why I think Akaza is actually a pretty good character in this series, because they're cooking with him, and they're also cooking with Kokoshibo, and I can't wait. So let's actually go ahead and dive more into his character. We then see a flashback to when Kokoshibo, I assume this was him, was a human and talking to Tanjiro's parents. Kokoshibo shouldn't, he basically Tanjiro's father really looks up to Kokoshibo, but Kokoshibo says he shouldn't be looked upon as someone special, but a failure, as he is worthless for failing as he has in his life. So he apparently regrets a lot of things and believes himself to be a failure, which maybe is one of the reasons why he became a demon at the very end. Maybe that was his regret. Tanjiro then, however, wakes up and he questions the dream that he just had, which I as well. I'm like, was that Tanjiro? Was that Tanjiro's dad? What's going on here? But either way, he's questioning the dream, and we see Kanao, who is shocked. She dropped her vase on the ground because Tanjiro has been in a coma for 2 months. And I once again, I love Kanao and Tanjiro's relationship. It is really fun. I'm glad we got to see more of it. We don't really get to see much of it throughout the series, maybe a couple times every season, but it's always fun to see. We then focus in on Goto for a minute. He's a member of the cleanup crew. Goto seems to respect all of the demon slayers, of the main 3 at least, the main trio, but he doesn't have any clue about Inosuke, which I agree. He doesn't have any clue. And the milk bread that he's delivering to Tanjiro, he really wants to eat it, which if you guys haven't had milk bread, I actually don't know if this is milk bread that they had, but if you've never had milk bread in general, learn how to make it. I recommend it, trust me. He then puts down Kanao as being this weird girl who just left this vase, this broken vase on the ground, and it gets onto her for not cleaning up. And I just at this moment, I'm just like, this guy is so ridiculous, but I love him. I don't know why. He's just so weird and so out there. But Goto then realizes that, hey, Tanjiro's out of a coma, and so he starts to scream at Kanao, like, what are you doing? Get everyone around here. And it's just great. I like Goto. And then we see the 3 little girls are summoned, and one of the little girls, her reaction to Tanjiro waking up is she's like, I'll give you some of my crackers, Tanjiro. Oh man, this show is just so cute. It never fails to put a smile on my face. I don't know why. And that's another reason why I think these Demon Slayer complaints are completely ridiculous, because this show is just so fun. It's so lighthearted at just the best times, and it makes you feel good. It makes you feel like you're watching something really fun, and I love that. And as well, we see this in the characters because Aoi, man, she's so amazing. I love her so much. She comes in shocked to see Tanjiro awake, and they basically just all begin to cry together. I love it. Aoi then cries, talking about Inosuke's state, but then quickly realizes, well, that's not the case because, wow, he's actually on the ceiling, which Tanjiro is like, well, I guess me seeing Inosuke on the ceiling is a hallucination. Totally not. It seems that Inosuke has just completely recovered because he's a freak of nature, because of course he has. And then Aoi brings out a book and is like, yeah, Shinobu calls Inosuke a honey badger. And then Inosuke says, well, in other words, that means I'm immortal. Oh my god, some good stuff. And then Kanao tells them to be quiet as Tanjiro falls asleep again. It's just so cute. Kanao and Tanjiro, the best ship, so adorable. I love them. I love this entire series. I ship them with whoever they want to be shipped with. That because I wish them all happiness. We even get to see a cat who is watching over Tanjiro and is glad that Tanjiro didn't die. So there's just a ton of cuteness going on, though I do wonder if that cat has any sort of significance. But anyways, Tanjiro recovers the next day. Zenitsu goes out on a mission, but he wants to return home to talk to Aoi because he's a simp. Then we get to see some of the stretching again, and man, it is never not crazy seeing how much they stretch these dudes. But then the girls, they basically suggest that Tanjiro go to Swordsmith Village to get his sword. So they travel to the village, but he basically has to be blindfolded, plugging his ears and even his nose, and basically forbidding all of his senses. And they have these girls and these other kakusho basically carry him through this elaborate guided tour to go to the Swordsmith Village, and he finally arrives. And I thought this whole concept was really cool. It just shows that there is a lot of thought and effort put into the world building of Demon Slayer that I think is very underappreciated, and this is one of them, because you have to think about it. Well, what does this mean? What this means is that Swordsmith Village is a place that nobody really knows about, and for very good reasons, and they have a whole plan in advance for people that want to travel to Swordsmith Village. So it's really smart world building and storytelling. It shows how important it is in the world as well, because if this place was found out, well, then the demons would get word of it, and they would go and try to take out this place, which is just literally, as the name suggests, a Swordsmith Village for demon slayers. We then see Mitsuri and her boobs. They are reintroduced. A lot of people thought that they would cut this scene, but it turns out this was just a website. Basically doing the whole searching on Twitter, something to be mad about, seeing one tweet some random person makes, and then making a whole article about it. So I'm glad it wasn't the case that this was going to be censored, because nobody was angry about it. Literally nobody besides one person. Tanjiro is then introduced to Teki Kawahara. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but he's basically both the smallest and most important person in the village by his words, and he's looking for Hotoro, who is missing, as he always seems to lose his temper. But at the end of the day, it's all on him. He forged a faulty sword, so there is that. And Tanjiro, basically, as he's walking through the village, he sees that there's just a ton of workshops and foundries all over, which I think is a really cool concept for a village. It's just a whole bunch of blacksmiths. And he finally goes to the hot spring, which can literally, by the way, heal anything, including a broken heart. So even if you have emotional troubles, you go to this little hot spring and you go in and, you get healed up right away, even if it's something emotional. I imagine it doesn't literally heal your emotions. It's probably something like, you sit there and relax and stuff like that. I don't know if it's literal, but it could be. You never know. But as Mitsuri is... as all of this is happening, he's being introduced to this hot spring. Mitsuri, yep, that's Mitsuri, running down with her breasts almost barreling out of her clothes. Even Tanjiro is like, your breasts are this close to spilling out. Tanjiro in this episode, honestly, just saying, he's shown a little bit more maturity around women as of late. Before, Tanjiro was kind of the sweet, wholesome boy, but this is not the first time he kind of gets taken off guard by Mitsuri's whole thing going on there. But Mitsuri, she's a little down about the whole thing, but she cheers up when she hears about what they'll be eating, which is rice at dinner, so she cheers up really easily. Mitsuri in this entire episode is actually really charismatic, and I think she's a huge breath of fresh air. And I'm not saying that just because, you know, she's the fan service Hashira, right? And I know that's kind of demeaning. I don't really mean that. I'm just mean that in a general way. She's actually really refreshing because she's got a whole different personality than the one we've never seen before in the series. So Tanjiro, while in the hot springs, then meets Genya, who is like pulling out his tooth. Really fascinating. So Tanjiro disrobes and greets him, but Genya is just like in season 1, he gets really ticked off for just the littlest things and tries to drown Tanjiro because Tanjiro thought, oh, if I got naked and disrobed, we could bond as men, right? And that's what I'm saying. That's what I do with my homies. I go to a hot spring, we're like, the first thing we do, get naked, y'all. We gotta bond. We gotta bond. We gotta let it hang out. We gotta hang bang. We gotta do it. But while this is happening, they're in the hot spring. Nezuko was in the hot spring. I'm like, why is Nezuko here? We haven't even seen her. Like, this is her first introduction in this season, is her just like swimming by at the very end of this in the hot spring. I was like, where does she pop up? And she's still wearing her muzzle and everything, even with relaxing. It's very interesting. But Mitsuri then starts to play with Nezuko after the hot spring as if she's a baby. So, you know, at the same time, I love them both. I love Mitsuri the most, though. Let's be clear on that one. I just love Mitsuri in this scene as well when she plays with Nezuko because she's like treating Nezuko as a little baby. And even at one point, she's like petting Nezuko. And I'm like, is this like, are you treating Nezuko as a human? Like a human child or a pet? I can't tell which one it is, Mitsuri, but is what it is. Which, by the way, if you guys want me to cover the Mitsuri Rengoku prequel manga, drop a like and actually make a comment about it because I really want to hear if you guys are interested in something like that. But anyways, continuing on about Mitsuri, I love her personality because she's like this big sister doting kind of personality, which I think is another reason why she's pretty refreshing. So Tanjiro then asked Mitsuri why she joined the Demon Slayer Corps, and she joined the Demon Slayer Corps to basically find the man of her dreams, which hearing this whole thing kind of seemingly overwhelms Tanjiro because she just goes into it. She's just like, oh man, I wanted to become a Demon Slayer so I can meet this man, and he's the man of my dreams. And by the way, she doesn't have anyone in mind. She's just freaking out about it, about the thought of it, which is hilarious. I love her. I love her to death. Best girl. At the same time, Mitsuri is clearly aware that they will die, so she wants to live it up and fight the good fight with Tanjiro, and she's rooting for the Komodos, which seems to charm them both. Tanjiro then says he thinks Tengen let him win in the last battle, which also shows the kind of character Tanjiro has. Clearly, he played a huge role in that. I mean, Tengen lost one of his hands, for Christ's sake. Like, anyone seeing this will go, yeah, Tanjiro, he pulled his fair share here. If anything, he was one of the integral figures. But at the same time, Tanjiro himself, he's humble. He is insanely humble. That is the one main aspect about Tanjiro's character besides his wholesomeness. Put an asterisk next to the wholesome part because Tanjiro, after Mitsuri basically speaks into his ear like really closely, Tanjiro, he really liked that when Mitsuri did that because his nose starts to shoot blood. So it seems our little Tanjiro is growing into a man slowly. Emphasis on slowly, but it's happening. Also, by the way, after this scene, we see Nezuko pop out of her box. Does she have the bodily consistency of a bottom feeder on the bottom of the ocean? Because she turned into something. I don't think she has any bones in her body. But anyways, the last scene of this episode, walking through the forest, Tanjiro comes upon Hyotoko arguing with the Mist Hashira, and behind them is the same man from his dream that he had, and as well, clearly, the upper rank one. So I don't know what's going on here. It seems like the intrigue is already starting with this season. Is the Mist Hashira a bad guy? Because the music that was playing during this scene kind of gave off the vibe that there was something dramatic going on here and something more sinister. Could this just be a way to get people to tie over into the next episode? Absolutely. At the same time, I'm not sure. But what are your theories after watching this episode? What did you think about it? Tell me in the comments below. Tell me if you want to see me cover that spin-off manga with Mitsuri and Rengoku. I will gladly do it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I love you all. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.